Are you curious about data analytics, data science, and the entire world of big data? Stay tuned to the Zista podcast as we dive deeper into this specific area. Welcome to the Zista Podcast, where we invite industry leaders and academicians to answer questions that students have within a specific subject area. Today, we're going to be focusing on data analytics. Joining us today is Hari Saravanabhavan, a gentleman with over 19 years of experience in this industry. He's worked with brands like Genpact, IBM, Cognizant, and going further back, he's worked with brands like Airtel and contract advertising. Incidentally, Hari started his career in the advertising and marketing space, and from there, he kind of progressed into data analytics. Hari is a member of the Forbes Technology Council, and he's regarded as one of the top 10 influential data science leaders you should be following in 2023. That's as per Analytics Insight magazine. Let's go straight into this session. Welcome to the podcast, Hari. We're delighted to have you here today.
Thanks so much, Amit. Nice meeting you, and really happy to be a part of this podcast that you're doing. Absolutely.
Really, it's our pleasure that you're here. Hari, I wanted to ask you a very basic question first. What really sparked your interest in data analytics, and how did you start your career in this field?
Good question. And, I got to probably go back 20 years plus to answer this question. So, but it's a good question because, there is a reason why I got into data analytics. And let me just give a perspective around that. I started my career in advertising and being in brand management. A lot of times, at that point of time, I used to hear these comments to say, this is the way I think my customer is. This is the way I think the consumer is and stuff like that, right? And I used to just wonder that, hey, every individual could have a different perspective of what that customer or consumer would really look like. And what is a good way to really authenticate that, right? And that's where the spark about, hey, is there a better way to really understand your customer or your consumer, depending on, which brand you're talking about, was really there in the back of my mind, right? So this is almost 25 years back when I used to start thinking that, can the world really have something more empirical? Can the world have something very, very logical to say, yeah, this is really how my customer or consumer is, right? So that was really my first incident when I was in advertising and brand management, which is really one of my passion areas. The other piece was, I used to run a line function for a large organization. And, over a period of time when I was running that function, I really felt that, a lot of things that happen in and around the metrics is something that I'm really aware of, my team is really aware of. What change can you really bring about? How can you really improve yourself, from where you are, other than the knowledge and, all the skills that people already have, right? So those were really two incidents where I would say data analytics played a role. And in both cases, today, a lot of work that I do, let's say in marketing analytics and stuff like that, is really getting an empirical view on your consumers, on your customers. So customer analytics, as they call it, right? Or journey mappings and stuff like that. All of this is really true coming in from the first incident. The second one, which is, where it's a line function, I do a lot of work in that as well. And today we use a lot of data analytics to move away from what I would say gut-led and, knowledge of that individual into something which is more empirical and can be accepted by a larger part of the world, right? So those two incidents, early parts of my career, they really shaped up my thoughts and processes around data analytics and have been that way, ever since those thoughts really came to my head.
Interesting. Indeed, when you're making big decisions, going by data that you can trust is far better than just following your gut instinct. And I can imagine in organizations of different sizes that a lot of importance is being paid to this, right? Yeah. So it's really interesting that the work that you're doing and the kind of projects that you get to work on. Hari, how would you explain data analytics to someone who does not know too much about it?
One of the things I want to call out, and I think, in a previous conversation that I had with you, I'd mentioned this, that even today, there is no standard definition for data analytics. Okay. Just as an example, data analytics is also called as big data analytics. In some cases, called business analytics. Some people say, hey, it's data sciences, so on and so forth. So it is a complicated world from that perspective. So just from a landing standpoint for everybody to know, it is a complex world, right? But to simplify it in a simple sentence, I would say that data analytics is really the application of technology, science, and I would include art. Maybe not everybody, but I would include art. To data, so that you can drive the right kind of insights, the right kind of outcomes to problems that you're looking to solve for. Right. That's probably the most simplest form of putting that together. I'm simplifying it. The moment I say, apply art, apply science, apply technology, they have their own, ways and means to do it. And that's really where the complexity really comes through, right? But at a grassroots level, that's what you're trying to do. You're looking at data, you're trying to apply the right kind of technology, science, and art to drive, the right kind of insights and outcomes for whatever challenge that you're really trying to pursue or whatever opportunity you're trying to pursue of it.
That's a good explanation, as good as any I've heard. And I'm sure you've broken it down in simple words. And I think you being a thought leader in this space allows you to do that. Very often you see people who are really subject matter experts in a particular domain are able to explain complex ideas in very simple words. And that's exactly what you've done right now. Hari,
hopefully, Amit. So I think probably, just from a simplification standpoint, right? I would just say, if you just look at a few examples, right? Hey, how can you use data analytics to give the right kind of, let's say, loan to an individual? Okay. Now, that's a very simple problem statement. Should I give a loan? Yes or no? But if you look at it from a data analytics standpoint, there are a lot of things that you're talking about. Hey, is the person eligible? Will the person really, be in a position to repay the loan? Should I give it at a particular interest rate? So on and so forth. Now, all of that is data analytics. On the outside, it just seems like there is an organization that can, give a loan, and there is a consumer who's really going to take that loan, right? So that's a problem statement. But how do you use science, technology, art, like I said earlier, and the right kind of processes for us to make, that entire use case come to life? Just as an example, right? So that's really on a loan example. You could do that in collections. You could do that in supply chain. Supply chain is a very good example. A lot of us today use Amazon, and you go to a website and you click and say you want a product, right? There's a lot of analytics that happen on the back end to say, one, did you give the consumer the right kind of choices, right? You're looking at past history, their browser history, so on and so forth. What have they purchased from you? All of that is data that is being analyzed for you to push the right kind of recommendations up to the consumer, right? So a recommendation engine is really, a good example of what you do with data and analytics. So that's one part. There's the entire backend part to say, how do you manage the delivery, right? I mean, can it go to the customer at the right time? Do they have preferences that you need to cater to, so on and so forth? Are they a special customer? Are they not a special customer? Do the rates change? All of that really is data that you process and analyze, and just make sure that the entire CX, the entire experience that you give from an end-to-end perspective is very top-notch, at the end of the day, right? So some examples, just to add to the complexity of what I try to, mention in a simple line, Amit.
Thanks for those examples. I think examples really help to drive a point home. Hari, I wanted to ask you one more question. In the context of, say, a deployment or a project, what are the different roles or functions within data analytics? Could you maybe touch upon that?
Yeah, it's a good question. Actually, it's a ever-growing list, to be honest, in the world of data and analytics. But broadly, I would say there are 3 or 4 skill sets, right? The first important skill set is really in and around the area of data. So what you call as data management. How do you really manage your data well? There are different roles that are being called out, like a data engineer, as an example, or a data analyst, right? So that's really on the what I call the upstream, managing the entire data, housing the data in the right form, processing the data and stuff like that, right? And the second piece is really on the analytics side. How do you really, take the data and convert that into meaningful insights? So you've heard of terminology called data scientists. Some people will call it as a business analyst. Again, the terminologies can change, but the role is to really manage the data in a form where you convert that data into meaningful insights. And finally, there is the aspect of presenting that data in a way that people can consume, the end consumers can consume, right? Which is where you have, reporting analysts, which are really on the right hand side of the spectrum, or the downstream of the spectrum. You've got visualization experts, so on and so forth, who really help you look at the insights in a way where you can make the right kind of decisions, right? So I would say from a end-to-end perspective, there is the entire data portion, there's the analytics portion, and then there is the orchestration portion, which all come together as different skill sets to make all of this, come to life. Over and above this, typically what is required is you also need what is called domain expertise. So depending on which industry and what problems you're trying to solve, you need people who can give the entire piece an industry or a domain flavor to make this, make this come to life and make this relevant. So that's really another big skill set that's very important. And finally, one last skill set, which I'm a big believer in, is what I call translators. When you look at data, when you look at the entire science, the art component of it is to really convert all of that into meaningful, simple outcomes that people can understand, right? Whether it's within the organization or outside the organization. So translators is a big role, in my opinion, which sits, across this entire spectrum, converting what is complicated into simple bites that the larger world can really consume, right? So I would say those are 5 big roles in my mind that the industry typically has. You could add some nuances around it, depending on the organization, depending on the use case and stuff like that. But broadly, these would be the roles that organizations would typically look for.
Awesome. There's so much progress I feel that's made in terms of, on the visualization side of things. So earlier, back in the day, when you used to look at data, I used to always be in a tabular format. But now you have so many graphical ways to express that same data that leaders and managers find it easy to consume that content, actually make some sense of it, and make good decisions. So that really is the larger intent of launching a data analytics project, right? So it's really interesting that you covered all those different elements, and of course added the aspect of the translator as well, making everything bite-sized and easy to understand. So thanks for that.
Yeah. Just to add to what you said, Amit, it's a great point, right? From an outside in, the way you're looking at this, I would think that the more we democratize insights, right, the more the visualization layer becomes important. Because when you are democratizing insights, you want to make sure that the level of effort that is required by your end stakeholders, this could be internal or external, is really at the lowest level, right? Because then they would like to consume what you're pushing through, right? So visualization really becomes a very, very important factor when you look at it from that standpoint. And that has actually assumed a lot of importance the last few years. Earlier, it used to be more about pushing the insights out, right? Now you're really pulling the insights, which means that the more democratized your insights are, the better is a decision-making ability for an organization or for a structure. It could be a public sector as well, right? For them to really do the right things, with the data that's housed within the organization. So absolutely, I think visualization is a big critical piece, in the entire democratization journey.
Sure. Hari, I wanted to ask you a question, and maybe this one isn't as easy to answer. If you are a business or even an individual, how do you identify the right question or problem to solve using analytics?
That's a good question. And it is not an easy answer, but I'll try and give my perspective around it, right? At the fundamental level, Amit, when you look at data analytics, there are 3 things that data analytics can really do, right? The first one is, what I call in my world, run better. So you have something today, and you have this need, or you have this perspective to say, can I do this better, right? So that's how you start building your use cases to say, I'm running a process today. Can I run that better? And better could be anything, right? You could improve your top line. Better could be, you improve your bottom line, so on and so forth. So you define your metrics, but at the end of the day, you're trying to run better an existing process that you already have, right? I would say that really is at the bottom level of the of the table. As you move on, you move to what is called run different, which means that you're not just looking at efficiency, but you're really looking at effectiveness, which means that you're looking at different ways, to really tackle that problem or that opportunity, and that becomes your use case, right? And finally, I would say that the third aspect of all of this is really what I said, transformation. So you're doing a complete changeover and saying, what I'm doing today is not sufficient. can I really change this over and really, transform the entire way of looking at things, right? For example, when you're looking at, delivery as an example, right? And earlier you used to have organizations, you should have consumers come to you and pick up stuff. Now they're really doing delivery. That's really a transformation. Now to do that transformation, what kind of data is required? What kind of analytics is required? That's really, very different from what you would do when you're trying to entertain customers or consumers who are coming over to your retail outlet, right? So I would say that, depending on which part of the journey you are in, you start defining your use cases with that perspective, right? Are you looking at doing things better? Are you looking at doing things different? Or are you really looking to transform the business? Basis that you really build out your use cases and obviously, work through the entire process. In the world of data and analytics, this is my perspective, everything gets broken down as use cases to begin with. So you've got to really look at your use case. You've got to look at, do you have the right data to support the use case? Can you analyze that data? Do you have all the compute power to work through the data and, give logical recommendations and insights? And how are you going to really orchestrate the actions coming out of all of this, right? And once you have the use case, which is well-defined, well executed, and if it is going to give you the kind of impact that you want, then you really move that into a pervasive, business case and roll that out, in a more pervasive manner. So the data analytics world is well accustomed to the use case methodology. So start off with the use case, and you could have different ways of positioning your use cases. You could say high impact, low effort, low impact, low effort, stuff like that, right? So you could put it on matrix and say, this is the way I will start, and this is the way I will keep this as a pervasive, long-term process for me to get that use case into a bigger. It could even become a bigger ongoing business problem that you will try and address, right? So I would say that's the typical methodology that organizations would use. And in the data analytics world, and I think it's a tried and tested methodology. People have found success going from a use case methodology all the way to becoming a pervasive function.
There's so much I learned just right now, and you talked about efficiency, you talked about effectiveness, and you talked about transformation. And so many times in the context of data analytics, we hear things like you have an engine which can help you predict what may happen next. So does that fall within the transformation bucket, or actually that predictive element can fall into each of those three buckets?
It can actually fall in each of the three, but primarily on the right-hand side, which means it's more about effectiveness and on transformation. Efficiency is really, if you look at efficiency, even by the definition, right, it's probably at a lower level. It's not that it's not important, it's important, but it's really at a lower level on the rungs of the ladder. And you're really looking at what is there existing for you to improve, right? The moment you're getting to the value curve, the analytics value curve, which is towards predictive, prescriptive, AI and stuff like that, in most cases, you're really moving towards to the right-hand side of the spectrum, which is, on effectiveness and transformation. But that's not to say that you can't do it. On the efficiency side, you can use a lot of AI today on the efficiency side as well. Automation is a good example, right? You could use automation in the efficiency side. So it depends on the use case. But I would say in general, the right-hand side of that spectrum is catered more towards efficiency transformation. That's where advanced analytics, AI really plays a big role. The left-hand side is really more about operational improvements.
Got it. Now, when you implement a recommendation, which has come from an AI system or a data analytics system or engine, you would have some metrics to measure whether that thing has been successful or not. But how do you, at a more macro level, decipher or understand whether the system itself is working as intended?
Right.
How do you manage that?
Yeah, without getting too technical, and again, I would just say at a very high level, we do what is called a champion challenger. So you've got a system that's working. You're challenging that system. You compare the results out of the two systems. And when I say system, using that more loosely, it could be algorithms and models and stuff like that, right? So you really compare contrast. That's what we call champion challenger, and then you know what the results are. So you hold out a sample. So there's a test and a control. You hold out. And when you do the comparison from an outcome standpoint, you really are able to say whether the model worked better or not. So that's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is also what is called out-of-time validation, which means that you take it for a different period. And if you build out a set of algorithms, you apply it to a different period and see whether it holds good or not. And if it holds good, where is the incremental really coming through, right? So those are typically the two ways in which you would measure the efficacy of whatever you're building, or it could be a system, it could be a model, so on and so forth. In most cases, I would say that this is the way you do it. And A/B testing, if you remember the last conversation that we had, right? In the creative conversation, A/B testing is another way that you really, do this from a terminology standpoint, right? So I would say that that's really how the industry works, which is, you do either of these for you to really compare, contrast, and say, or do a out of time validation to figure out whether your models are as efficient or not, or as effective and efficient or not, depending on the use case that you're really trying to solve.
Right. All right. That's interesting. And it's interesting to know that A/B testing is not just limited to the world of creativity and communication. It's most certainly used in different contexts, and data analytics is no stranger there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Hari, I wanted to ask you one more question. Now, let's say I'm an individual. I want to build a career as a data scientist or a data analyst, as a data analyst. What skills or certifications should I possess?
So again, it could be a big laundry list of skills and certification, because the industry is like that, right? It's ever evolving and stuff like that. But I think at the grassroots level, there are probably 3 or 4 competency areas that an individual should really focus on, and you'll never have the best of all. It's really your individual characteristic, your personality, what really motivates you, and you can really change. One is really technology. So you could be on the computer science world. You could really look at coding and stuff like that. So if you look at the stuff around data, managing the data, manipulation, so on and so forth. It's a big area, right? Data engineering. So, but that's got a very strong technology background. So that could be some skill set that you would have in technology. The second, what I call my word, is techniques, which is where the analytics piece really comes through. So when I say techniques, how do you do predictive stuff? All the data science, all the advanced analytics, how do you build up models and things like that, right? That's really the second stream. Typically, you have a background in statistics, economics, and stuff like that. So that's really your techniques, the second portion. The third piece is really on BI, which is business intelligence. You got, reporting. So how do you really, take all the insights and like we said earlier, allow people to consume it in a way where they can make the right kind of decision, right? So it's got to have the right kind of appeal. It's got to have the right kind of ease for people to really make the right kind of decisions, right? So that, the BI push is really a combination. You could have some amount of techniques and some amount of technology as well. So that's really the third skill set. The fourth skill set in my mind is domain. What domain do you really come from, right? So banking could be a domain, right? Supply chain could be a domain or industry, right? So that's really the fourth one. And I think it's a very, very important, component in the entire data analytics world, because the relevancy of the use case, it really depends on the domain or the industry, right? And fifth, like I said, is, could be what I would loosely call as more general management skills. In this world, and why I say general management is, how do you program manage all of this, right? Always remember that in the technical world or the technology world, converting everything, communicating the right way, making sure that your stakeholders are understanding. So that's where the translators, etc., come in. It's a very strong skill set. A lot of people undermine that skill set, but it's really an important skill set, right? So it's more general management skills where you have a mix or a good understanding of all of this, and you're able to convey both ways, right? Take stuff from your stakeholders and give it back to the team, and vice versa. Take stuff from the team and give it back to your stakeholders. Just like how client servicing happens in an agency, right? Very similar to that. You can never undermine that role, right? Because if the brief is wrong, your creative is wrong. The same way, right? If the brief is wrong, your models are going to be wrong, and vice versa. If you are not able to convey the model outcomes the right way to your stakeholders, again, you're probably not going to have a successful program, right? So those are the 5 skills that that sit in different buckets. Again, there are going to be varying levels of I would say tools and stuff like that over a period of time people need to get used to and get to be experts at. But broad level, individuals should really be clear which way they want to go, right? I would say that today the world is also converging. So you've got people trying to get more than one competency in. It's not an easy thing. Everybody wants a unicorn, where everything comes together. But again, there could be different schools of thought. You could go deep being a good data scientist, become a master data scientist, so on and so forth. Similarly, you could be a good data engineer and then become an AI engineer in the data world, so on and so forth. So it really depends on the individual preferences. But at a broad level, I would think that those are some of the cuts that you would see in the industry.
Interesting. And thank you so much for, highlighting all these points. From all the points that you mentioned, the element of domain knowledge is something, if say, for example, you're a fresher, you don't have any domain knowledge. So the only way to get that domain knowledge then would be to work on a project or take up a job which allows you to work with that domain. I think one thing that I can say is that maybe students could help that to choose the right job, a job which allows them to work in a specific domain. But it's so interesting, the amount of data that's being generated, the way it's being modeled and manipulated. There's a lot of scope for people to do well in this industry. There will definitely be a need for people to join this industry. And I'm sure, hearing from you, a lot of students would be interested to kind of explore this further and, go deeper into this space.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a growing industry, and there's always a need for professionals across the spectrum that we just spoke about. And in my own mind, I think more and more organizations are really going to be what I would say analytically sensitive and analytically inclined. It's just a matter of time, right? You really see that to be on a rise because data is being generated, right? And if you treat data as a raw material, as a resource, and you really put your mind together and say, I'm going to use this data the right way, every organization will really become a data-driven organization, right? So in my mind, when we call digital natives, organizations that are really born in this era, most of them really are successful because they have a very strong data and analytics approach and a culture within their organization, right? All their decision-making, et cetera, is really data-driven, insights-driven, intelligence-driven. And for that, you need this kind of a spectrum to work on the back end for you, right? So absolutely, I mean, it's an evergreen industry, and it's probably going to get to the next level of soaring success, as we move forward.
Awesome. Thank you, Hari. Thank you so much for taking time out from your day and coming on our podcast. Some of the thoughts and the points that you shared here are absolutely amazing. So I'd like to thank you for being here with us.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity, Amit. And, being from the industry, I would love to have more and more, young blood coming into the industry and obviously, also challenging what we do today. So that's how industries grow. I always keep telling people that this is an industry which is, where you've got to keep learning. There's no time to stagnate, right? Because that's the, dynamic nature of the industry. So, we spoke about data, then came analytics, and then came AI. From AI, now we're in Gen AI. It's never ending, right? It's fascinating. So I would just give a thumbs up, to the industry and say, be part of the industry. Absolutely.
Awesome. I hope you enjoyed this session. There's just so much we learned about data analytics, about the different job roles and functions, the fact that the industry has a bright future and needs qualified professionals. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube. If you like what you're seeing, we're going to keep creating content like this, content that adds value to you. Follow us on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. Our handle is the Zista Podcast. Till we meet again, we'd say, stay curious.